Feelings. Why Ken's wrong. Feelings are something Ken Wheeler claims to disregard in favor of facts, logic, and wisdom. Find out how the angry photographer's entire worldview is based on an irrational fear of death and why his unbridled emotions make him wisdom's greatest traitor. Feelings, or emotions, are something everyone experiences all the time. As distinguished philosopher Bertrand Russell explained, the good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. In other words, a wise person maintains a healthy balance between positive feelings and lifelong learning. Some of our emotions, like hate and fear, are generally negative, but hope, compassion, and courage are part of what it means to be fully human. This applies to explaining our ideas to others as well. In his foundational book, Rhetoric, Aristotle explained that a persuasive discourse had three broad elements: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos, from which we also get the word ethics, refers to our credentials, or why making a presentation about the subject is the right thing for the speaker to do. Logos is Aristotle's term for the logic, facts, and evidence we present to appeal to the listener's intellect. Thirdly, pathos, or feelings, represents a positive emotional appeal to make our points feel important and engaging. According to Aristotle, it takes all three of these elements to make a persuasive presentation. Ken Wheeler passionately disagrees with Aristotle. He insists that there are no authorities in a debate and that we shouldn't be swayed by a speaker's tone or emotional appeal. This is understandable from his perspective. Being entirely self-taught, Kentucky Ken has no moral authority to discuss any of the topics he covers on his YouTube channel. On top of that, the angry, hostile, and aggressive demeanor the angry photographer uses to make his point is often off-putting. He complains that many of the people with whom he argues have told him they don't care for his tone. The Theoria Apophasis host goes so far as to tell his audience that he actively shuns anyone who ends a conversation by telling him they don't like his tone. Of course, since it's the other person who ends the discussion, we have to wonder who shuns who in these situations. More to the point, giving people the silent treatment in this way is both childish and petulant. In other words, it's an emotional reaction to what someone says to Ken Wheeler. We can confirm this using the angry photographer's own words. He tells his audience that when someone objects, not to what he says, but to the way in which he says it, that just burns me up. Kentucky Ken goes on to say, I will in the future pretend you don't exist. I'll never contact you for anything. I won't give you any business. I won't give you the time of day. Of course, this indignant behavior stems from emotion rather than the angry photographer's cherished facts, logic, and wisdom. The irony of this spiteful silence seems lost on him. Even so, there are deeper concerns about the Theoria Apophasis host's lack of self-awareness and difficulty distinguishing his own reason from his passions. The foundation of Ken Wheeler's entire life stance is his belief in the ether. It drives his misguided magnetism model and his peculiar metaphysical speculations. The angry photographer's ideology has its roots in his irrational fear of death. Discussing the belief that death is the end of consciousness, he once let slip, "Who would want that? It would be better to suffer 1,000,000 transmigrations and 1,000 mountains the size of Mount Everest." A person who forms his opinion on facts, knowledge, and wisdom doesn't base their beliefs on what they want to be true. It's the aversion to his own death that leads the Theoria Apophasis host down the rabbit hole. Oddly, This passionate desire for eternal life drives Ken Wheeler's pseudo-scientific notions. In ancient Greece, philosophers like Socrates and Plato believed in an afterlife through reincarnation or the transmigration of souls. Others, like Democritus and Epicurus, believed that our souls come to an end when we die. Coincidentally, they also believed that matter consists of atoms, while the Platonists believed in an invisible fifth element called the ether. As we explain in detail under field theory, Why Ken's Wrong, Michelson and Morley found that the ether doesn't exist in 1887. A scientist Ken Wheeler calls one of the gods of field theory, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, called the ether hypothesis a mistake. So belief in the ether violates the logical principle Occam's razor. William of Ockham famously said, "Entities are not to be multiplied without necessity." And the ether is a textbook example of one of those unnecessary entities. Their teachings about life after death place Kentucky Ken squarely on Team Plato, and so he believes that all so-called atomists are evil, while those who still believe in the disproven concept of the ether are spiritually enlightened. This leads the angry photographer to the bizarre conclusion that quantum mechanics equals atomism equals atheism equals nihilism equals evil. Yet, he claims to base his pseudoscience on facts, logic, and wisdom, rather than mere feelings. This same emotional attachment drives the Theoria Apophasis host's outlandish metaphysical speculations. For example, his peculiar radio analogy, linking the human soul to a signal and water to an antenna, has its origins in his fear of death, and clinging to the same disproven notion of the ether. Ken Wheeler's kooky notions contradict the facts of Michelson and Morley, the logic of William of Ockham, and the wisdom of Aristotle. If emotions are the enemy of reason, Ken Wheeler is wisdom's greatest traitor.